where strategy gaming meets good vibes. No stress, just critical moves.
Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of the Critical Moves podcast, a new strategy gaming podcast that releases every Friday. My name is Nuno, I'm coming from Strategy and Wargaming, and today I'm joined by Al from RTS HQ. Hello Al.
Hello strategy gamers.
I'm also joined by Tim from Beyond All Reason. Hello Tim.
Hey everyone, how you doing?
And I'm also joined by Joe, who's actually Clark Kent in disguise. Hello Joe.
Hello everyone, glad to be here.
Today we'll be discussing strategy game remasters, what do we think of it, what were our favorites, and what games we would love to see remastered in the future. So let's kick things off right away, and I'll be passing the ball on to Al. Al, what do you think about strategy gaming remasters?
I don't like them.
Why?
That's a good start. I think they are lazy cash grabs.
That's not hard to agree with, I'll say.
You know, I am always really excited about a new remaster, and then I find that they feel so dated even though they look better. It's just hard for me to get past that.
Yeah, I'm maybe a little bit tongue-in-cheek. One of the games I've really enjoyed playing in 2024 is the Command Conquer Remastered collection. It has just been such a nostalgia trip. Red Alert was one of the first games I ever played from an RTS perspective, and getting to do it all over again when I'd forgotten the missions, I'd forgotten what the objectives were. Getting to do it all over again was just a phenomenal experience. I really enjoyed Red Alert Remastered.
Did you not try OpenRA before?
No, I never did. I've done some research and I've seen it, but I haven't tried it. What's the difference between it and the remastered collection? Does it have like the better graphics or not?
So I would say it compares quite well with a very similar process that happened with Age of Empires 2. Both in Red Alert and in Age of Empires 2, there was like a community-led kind of like improvement. The biggest thing was something like screen resolution, because, you know, back in the 90s, screen resolutions was quite something else. But it came along with all sorts of different improvements, and yeah, that's, I guess, an issue that I have is like, look, there's a team of people here that did this for free out of love, and they added something to the game. And then a studio comes along and basically did something very similar. Although I do say with OpenRA and Red Alert Remastered, it was a bit more okay. So I think they added some scenes as well, and then some voice acting. I didn't see it through, but I think there was quite a bit more to it. But still, it does feel a bit like, hey, you're grabbing something that the community did, and then you're doing it just for money, I guess.
Yeah, okay, and I suppose OpenRad aren't making any money out of what they're doing.
No.
But the IP doesn't belong to them, so
No.
EA are well within their rights to release a remaster of Red Alert, Command and Conquer, and any other game, you know?
And I'm in my right not to buy it.
Absolutely. Vote with your wallet, man.
Did you notice though that you can't move around with your keyboard when you're playing Command and Conquer Red Alert? It threw me off so much. It did not control very well in my mind when I played it because of that. And I remember thinking, why couldn't you do this? How hard would that have been to make that upgrade?
Yeah.
Is that on the remastered collection as well? I can't remember. You can't use your... I guess it's not something I do. I tend to use the mouse to push to the edge of the screens, and I think that with Red Alert being such a close-in view, that wasn't really an issue for me. I was quite happy just using the mouse to move the screen, which is what I did with the original, I guess. So it just felt like I was playing the game again, but with polish. And what Tim mentions about OpenRA, I think, yeah, valid point. But I knew that buying the remastered collection, it would just work. I'm not saying that open world wouldn't just work, but there's tweaks. They don't have the same ability to do testing on all of the millions of different combinations. So I was quite happy to spend $20, whatever it was, on the collection.
I think that's something I actually have to agree with Joe here, which is like when I'm looking at remasters, I'm looking for, I think, three things. So the first one is better graphics, because I think like if 20 years have gone by, I think you can present something better other than rehashing what already exists. The other one is a better UI, because UIs of old were quite a pain. They were quite a pain back then, and they're actually even worse looking back now, because you got used to something better. But I think for me the most important thing, like I can live without those other two, but I can't live without better controls. I think the control stuff is probably the better aspect of a remaster, because so 2 decades have gone by, and you have gotten used to a new control scheme, and you've gotten used to using your arrows or your A, W, S, and D keys, and I found that so weird to go back and play old games, and I can't use my keyboard to control the camera. I cannot group my units using the keyboard, and that's actually puts me off a lot. I really like that when when companies are rebuilding these old games, that they take this extra step of including new control schemes, because that brings in it's something that I can't live without right now. So.
But you're talking about a remake there, not a remaster. You know, if you start bringing in new UIs, new control schemes, and all things like that, that's not a remaster of an original game. People play remasters because they want that nostalgia hit, because they want to remember what it was like playing that game in the first place. If you start changing all of those essential and critical components, it's no longer the same game. You might as well just make a new one.
Did you see Pharaoh remake?
The what, sorry?
Pharaoh, the game Pharaoh. So they did that as well quite recently. I think last year they did a Pharaoh remake, and it actually, the UI is better and it looks nice and everything. One thing that they did though is they made it cartoony, which I found such an odd choice to do. Like, because it was, I wouldn't say that it was a serious game, but it was certainly not a childish game by any stretch of the imagination. And they made it cartoony, which was like really off-putting. I think it can be okay if you're trying to lure new people into that game, and it is still a good game to play today. But then you might as well just make a new game with new mechanics, with new IDs and everything like that. And then they just made the exact same game, but then made it cartoony, which I found so odd, because you're not trying to appeal to exactly what you mentioned right now, this feeling of how it used to be.
So this was Pharaoh: A New Era, wasn't it? Which was a remake rather than a remaster.
Yeah.
So there's a clear difference between remasters and reworking a game, and I think that for me, a remaster is something that you just build from the ground up while taking inspiration for something and trying to capture that feeling of the original. While just remastering a game or is just like you improve on it, like you pick up on the original and you improve on it. And this is why I think, like, when you're touching on this control scheme stuff again, I think that if you're improving on the control scheme, I think you're not exactly rebuilding the game from scratch. You're just introducing some new quality of life features. And I think a game that actually that amazingly well recently was Age of Mythology. I'm not sure if you played Age of Mythology Retold, but Age of Mythology Retold is built on the same engine that 2012, I think, version was built on. And what they did was they kept the basics and they worked upon it. So they improved the graphics, they added new units, they added new animations, new graphics, they added a new campaign, and I think it worked out incredibly well. But I also think, and like Tim said, they might have touched a little too much on the graphics, and some of the characters lost their I would say low poly charm it had on the original, because like it was really cool to you need to imagine to imagine the details, and now looking at those units with those heavy details, they might look a bit off, and they might look a bit too colorful and too cartoony from what I remembered. And I went back and played the original just to make sure I wasn't imagining, and yeah, they touched on that, and it felt a bit weird to look at something you saw as grounded and to look similar to a mobile game of sorts. Yeah, that was kind of weird for me.
What Tim says about they might as well make a new game, this is probably where I find I have the majority of my distaste for remasters comes in, because they are just cash grabs. They're an easy way for people to release a game where they've not had to build an IP, they've not had to build a story, they've not had to design units. Yeah, they've put some polish on them, maybe they have, maybe they haven't. And they put a game out to hook into people's nostalgia and just sell new games. Now, you could argue that it's actually a safe business model. You're not having the risk of putting all of that investment into a startup, but it just seems a bit cheap to me.
Yeah, and a couple things about that. They know it's going to work, right? Because so many people played it that they demanded a remake. So it is kind of a cop-out, They know it's going to work, so they remake it. They just make a couple things. They make some money. One thing that Command Conquer did, or Red Alert is the one that I played, that was really smart to me, is it started in low poly old mode, and then it tells you hit spacebar, and I didn't realize what they were saying, and I was like, oh, this looks terrible. I don't want to play this. This looks terrible. And then I hit spacebar, and I was like, oh, it looks so good. They got me. I was so impressed with their work. They instantly convinced me on the necessity of this remaster.
Did you ever play it in... So did you ever play it in the old graphics mode? Did you ever go back to how...
Oh, yeah.
You did? I
didn't go back after.
Oh, that's what I mean.
But I played it a long time ago.
As soon as you could change it to a more modern look, you stuck with the more modern look.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think there's two very good cases for a remaster. One, I would say that is, if there's still, to this day, a large player base that still plays it, and then you cater to that player base, especially if it's like a multiplayer heavy game, you cater to that, and then you keep a fire running in this community. And I think that's like really powerful even. And I think Age of Empires 2 is like the best example of that, right? Like it's still one of the most, if not the most played RDS game out there. And this fire started with the Forgotten Empires, this community-based expansion pack, but then it did keep burning thanks to the definitive edition, which is actually really, really good and well done. And I think what you guys were mentioning, the quality of life improvements, I think this is incredibly important because these games were made a very long time ago, and the gaming development community learned some things in the last decades, and these quality of life things are pretty big. The other case that might mean a remake or a remaster could be really good is when there was a really good game that was well made, that had a lot of really good elements, a good story, a good ID, this or that, but at the time of making, maybe there was some limitations in hardware, or there was some mistakes in the game design where they, like maybe the AI was not good, or the a bunch of things that they fumbled, and then you're able to basically remake that, use these elements that were really good but did not accomplish a good game because of some of these mistakes, and then you basically, thanks to the decades that we've learned in game development, you're able to overcome them, and then you remake them. And I have some thoughts about some games that could really use that were really fun, but I think that we can touch on that in a bit.
It's interesting you say that they have to, having a big multiplayer component can really be a reason to remake a game, but they have to be careful. Look at what happened with Warcraft Reforged. There was a lot of blowback on that game because they killed a bunch of multiplayer stuff because not everything worked, or they didn't remake everything. And that was I mean, maybe
That was
they
so
made
weird.
money, but I don't think it's a success.
No, it's so weird. I don't get how they did not see that, or they were too so short-sighted. I don't get it.
Just making remasters just for quality of life concerns reminds me of my terrible experience with Rome Total War Remastered. Now, I sank 2,000, 3,000, not joking, hours into the original Rome Total War. I remember loaded it on a couple of DVD ROMs. You had to swap the discs. The map, it was fantastic. Couldn't wait to get my hands on the remaster. I thought this is going to be fantastic. It's going to be improved graphically, improved with the battle AI. It's going to be a better game, and it was a worse game. These quality of life improvements that they brought in, like they added merchants, pointless. You know, that they didn't bring anything interesting to the game at all. The battles felt more clunky than what the original did. And when was it, 2001 or something that Rome Total War was released? The remaster just didn't do it for me. It was a flop as far as I'm concerned.
But I'll be honest, I don't think I would play Rome 1 anymore either. I think that game aged too much, and a lot of the newer Total War series, they added a lot of really good elements that Rome 1 just doesn't have, and I don't think Rome 1 is a good game to remaster personally.
But I have a question I need to ask. Did you not enjoy the remaster because you had higher expectations for it? Or because you just did not find the improvements worthwhile? What was actually the reason of that? Because if you sunk so many hours on the original game, I suppose you would find the remaster to be as equally interesting, no?
It's difficult. I think that I probably get a weirdly an emotional connection to gaming. I think maybe we all do, but I think that a lot of the time you don't expect there to be an emotional connection with RTS games or with strategy games, you know. It's not an RPG, it's not a walking sim, it's not Silent Hill, you know. It's a completely different game. But I think the amount of time I spent playing Rome Total War, it's connected to the feelings that I had back then. Maybe I just loved my life back then. Maybe I was free. I had no kids. I could do whatever I wanted to do. I could spend 12 hours conquering Europe with one of the Roman factions. And those feelings of well-being and joy were intrinsically linked to that particular game. And then when I played the remaster, it just didn't feel the same game. Maybe it's because of a change in my circumstances. I didn't feel the levels of joy I felt when I first played Rome. That's possible. But I just thought it just wasn't... Maybe I expected more. Maybe I expected it to be the original Rome, but with polish. Maybe I just wanted a graphical upgrade. Who knows? It just didn't work.
Yeah, I also didn't love that one. And I think for me, it was because I turned it on and played it for maybe an hour. And I remember thinking, why would I play this when I could play Warhammer Total War? You know, it's not like Empire Total War that does all this other stuff. You know,
or Rome 2. I mean, I think you can play Rome 2, and it's just a better game, and everything's better about Rome 2 than Rome 1. So why play Rome 1?
I need to ask you guys. So we've been talking a lot about negative aspects of remasters. So I think I need to ask, what remasters have you actually enjoyed? There's got to be something, right?
Yeah. And as I said, I thoroughly enjoyed the Command and Conquer Remastered collection because it just brought back all of those memories of playing it the first time. So I thought it was a fantastic game. It did everything right that Rome Remastered did wrong.
Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition.
I really liked Command and Conquer.
For me, it's the Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. I already mentioned it here, but I think in a large part it is because the community was still alive when it was made, and then it kind of it was made with a lot of effort. Like it was not the HD edition which came before, which was a cash grab, and then the Definitive Edition was like well made, and then it gave more tools for the multiplayer community and everything, and that was very welcome, I think, and needed as well. So I think you have to kind of pay respects to the players who will buy the game. You have to like put in the effort. Yeah.
I liked Age of Mythology Retooled. I never played the original, though, so I didn't have any nostalgia for the original. I just thought Age of Mythology Retooled was fun. I thought Red Alert, the remaster, was good. There were some things I didn't like, but I still had fun playing it. And then, I don't even know if it counts as a strategy game, but the Baldur's Gate remasters, the enhanced editions, I liked those too.
So I'm quite curious, actually. So if you played only the retold version of Age of Mythology, how do you feel like it compares to other newer RTS games? Like, what do you think of that?
I thought it held up just fine. I thought it looked okay. I didn't feel like I was missing anything, really. I liked it. Good story.
The story is amazing, by the way, of Age of Mythology. This is a really good campaign. And what I really like about the campaign as well is that it's very diverse. The missions, they don't play out like a lot of the older strategy games, which I have some problem with. The old strategy games, the campaigns are very monotonous. Like, oh, here you have a base, you have to kill the enemy base, and then again. Age of Mythology was like really diverse, the campaign. I really like that.
Yeah, I think Age of Mythology might be the best and most recent example of a remaster really well made, because they improved on everything. And I recently replayed the campaign and I forgot how incredibly interesting it was, and how they managed to bring together like the three main factions, so the Egyptians, the Norses, and the Greeks, into one extremely well made campaign. And I still remember, I think I remembered like every mission of the campaign, and I played the game when it came out and I was like 10 years old. So I think it's a fantastic title, but I've also believed that there are other really interesting titles that have released very recently. So for example, I think Stronghold, the definitive edition, is also really, really well done, because they kept the game as it was. They didn't had a lot of stuff. They had a new campaign, which is great, but they left the original intact, and that was something I was actually looking forward to, because Stronghold is that kind of game that I played. I think I play like every month. I would up Stronghold and I play a couple of hours, so it was fantastic to have that being remastered, and no one decided that it was time to tweak too much with it, so they left it as it was. They improved on the graphics. Again, they adding too much detail to some of the units, which I think removed some of the character they had. So I think the archers look a bit too cartoony now. The macemen also look like they have the head of a pig, which is I know it's supposed to, because one of the characters is called the pig, and that character main unit are the macemen. But I think they might have went a bit too far with that. But other than that, I think the game is amazing. The campaign is still as awesome as it was, and the gameplay loop is. I think Stronghold is the best medieval game ever made, and I don't think any game to date, even Manor Lords, managed to surpass it. Well, this might not be too correct to say, because I think I said Manor Lords was the best medieval game of all time in strategy and wargaming, so I might be contradicting myself, but hey.
That's not like you to contradict yourself.
Oh, no. Not at all. I'm always right.
Stronghold.
I used to love that game, Stronghold, and I almost played the definitive, but I just decided to do Age of Mythology instead. Now I'm regretting it.
You've got time.
You need to play both. They're so well made, and the fact that you can, like we said before, like you can use a new control scheme on exactly the same game with a lot of UI improvements. It's just fantastic. And I think it managed to capture that feeling of, man, this is exactly how I remember playing it as a kid. Because it essentially is. It just keeps the charisma of the original intact while adding some modern tweaks that the original was seriously missing 20 years later. So yeah, I think it was a fantastic title.
But then my question is, they tried Stronghold 2, they tried Stronghold 3, not very good games. Stronghold 1 was clearly by far the best game, and then Crusader is basically a Stronghold 1 with extra, right? And then this Definitive Edition, good, much better than the HD edition, which was like a total cash grab. But then where does it go from there? Because I do fear a little bit that the formulas don't get improved. And I do think that it does need innovation, and these remasters might make people a bit lazy. And then you do need, like, okay, you're the developers of Strongholds. You do need a way forward. You do need to make a new, fresh game that's fun to play. And I think that's really difficult if you get stuck in this remasters idea.
I think if you look at remasters isolated, so a remaster is a remaster, and that's what you're expecting from it. So you're just expecting like Stronghold, but with improvement. I think it's fine, but I don't think remaster should replace innovation. So if Stronghold should be building a new entry to the series, so maybe they could try a new approach. Maybe they could, I don't know, make a game set in the Iberian Peninsula with Portugal, Spain, and all the Andalusian thing. I mean, just personal preference, but that's okay. I think they have a lot that they could do with the title, and I don't mind when remasters do what they set out to do well. And I think we should look at remasters as what they are. So they're just picking up an old game, polishing it up, releasing it. And if the price tag matches this expectation, so if they cost 60 euros, might be problematic. But if they cost 15, 20 euros, I think, or $20, I think it's perfectly okay.
But you can't take them in isolation. I think that remasters are one of the root causes for the demise of innovation, because companies are looking at, oh, hey, look, EA released Command Conquer Remastered Collection, and it did really well. Not as well as a brand new Red Alert game might have done, but it did really well. So now EA are thinking, well, why should we bother making a new game? Why should we bother investing all this money in a new IP, in a new engine, in new art, in new story? Other companies looking at it and saying, well, hang on, the Red Alert, the Command Conquer Remaster was really, really good. Let's remaster one of our games, rather than making something new. And this is one of the death knells of the strategy genre, is remasters.
But if that's true, what was EA and other companies doing prior to remasters? They weren't building new games, right? So that's why you had like a massive drought of RTSs from 2007 maybe until quite recently, because the market, I think it's a very weird concept, because the market had to prove itself to these companies that it existed, and I think remasters also opened up a new way, or they reinvigorated the interest people had for RTS. And I think that's why you see a lot of new titles coming up. And I don't think it's also a coincidence that these titles actually look very similar to older titles, because we're trying to capture that feeling of old. So like with Dorf, I think there's a relationship here between, like, remasters were initially a cash grab. I agree with that, but they also proved that there was a market for it. And with this new market, I think companies came to the realization that, well, maybe there's actually something here that we can build new games to. And that's why I think we're seeing like a lot of new RTS games and the new strategy games being released.
But the issue also is that it's about who you keep on the payroll as a company. Because, I mean, if you keep the people on for things like the texture and so on, but you don't keep on people for game design and improvements and like that, that also changes what kind of games you make.
The issue I have with what Nuno was saying is that there is no more innovation. Now, we didn't have remasters before because, well, you don't remaster a game that's 5 years old. You do one that's 20 years old. So it never was something which would have occurred to people in 2005 or whatever. You know, they were innovating, and they're not innovating anymore because it's easier to stick out a remaster of your original title than it is to do something fresh and new and interesting with your next release.
So, and what games would you like to see? Like, if you had the perfect world, if you had all the money in the world, if you're like directing the companies that were making these games, what kind of games would you guys like to be remastered? So, Joe, go ahead.
I've got two that I want to do. The first one, I don't even know if it's possible. You can only have one. I can only have one.
I'm gonna have two as well, to be honest.
You can have one as well.
He said infinite money.
I'm gonna do Battle for Middle Earth 1. That game was so fun, and with new graphics and modernization, it would be so cool to do it. To do the Battle of Helm's Deep and to actually do it and to do that charge at the end with the Rohirrim, just amazing. I actually played this game, the old one, in the past month. So that's my pick.
My pick is Dawn of War. Now, I don't think it's such a massive reach that we should see a Dawn of War remaster. Dawn of War 2 changed the original game, which was quite classic RTS with base building, changed it to make it more RPG. Dawn of War 3 fell flat on its arse. But I think there's huge interest in the Warhammer IP at the moment. You've got Henry Cavill involved in bringing Warhammer 40k to the screen with Amazon Studios. That's something which is in the pipeline. I think that as an IP, it's on the up and up. And the reason I don't think that it's such a stretch is because it's designed by the same company who made Company of Heroes 3. So you have an engine which could automatically be used to remake or remaster Dawn of War for a new audience. I think it would be a fantastic game. I would snap it up in an instant.
But how? Are you talking about Dawn of War 1 or Dawn of War 2?
Dawn of War 1. We ignored Dawn of War 2.
Why?
It's that whole... You had base building in Dawn of War 1. Yeah, it was squads. It wasn't large scale. But you had that classic RTS base building. Dawn of War 2 got rid of the entire base building thing as part of the campaign. I think they brought it into skirmish and multiplayer, but they got rid of it for the entire campaign. And they lost a lot of the core audience when they did that. Then when they released Dawn of War 3, they tried to bring it back, but also keep a lot of the elements from Dawn of War 2. And just made a complete mess of it, and that's why Relic said they essentially abandoned Dawn of War 3 not long after it was released. They said we're releasing no more updates, we're not doing anything with it, because they knew that it tanked. I don't think we'll see a Dawn of War 4 because I think that as we've said, the amount of work that needs to go into producing a brand new game is significant when you're talking about 40k. Star Wars, any of the established RTS or strategy IPs that are out there, the amount of work required is significant for a new iteration, but a remaster takes less work, it takes less investment, it's less of a commercial risk to what is essentially businesses.
Am I crazy to think that Star Wars would fit almost perfectly in the Company of Heroes formula? Because if you look at Star Wars, it's like World War II in space, right? So I think it would work incredibly well. And I don't even mind if you just replace like the GIs for stormtroopers, and I would buy that. I think it's fantastic. I think it would be a fantastic idea. Hey, Relic, if you're listening to this, please feel free to hire me to design your game, because I think I would be doing a better job than you did with Company of Heroes 3. So, Tim, if you had unlimited resources, what would be your...
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that, because Star Wars Empire at War for me is a game that is super fun, super nice, and I can't play it because it's way too buggy, and to me that fits perfectly in, needs a remaster. I kind of like it how it was. I'm not a huge fan of Company of Heroes myself, though I do see what you mean, where it does have like these big units that you need to maneuver a lot and use, and the World War II theme is definitely there in Star Wars universe. That being said, even more than Empire at War, I would say Total Annihilation Kingdoms. I think Total Annihilation Kingdoms was a great story. It was a really fun campaign, and it was buggy, and there was like a big gaping holes that could, I believe, be fixed decently. And I think it's a bit of a shame, because the story was actually legit fun and good, and I would like to see a remaster of that with creative freedom. Not that will ever happen.
Who owns the IP for TA now?
Yeah, that's a kind of a gray zone, because Atari bought the IP originally, and then Atari went somewhere else, and it's kind of like a string like that. And then like who owns the IP is actually, I believe, a gray zone, or someone completely uninterested in any of this. One of the two. I don't remember the exact.
So I guess this is me. It's my turn now, and I'm going to bring like the most obscure title of all, because I was listing what games would I like to see remastered, and I came to the conclusion that all my favorite games have been remastered. So Age of Empires and Stronghold and Age of Mythology. So I'm lucky enough to have all the games from my childhood to be playable in a modern state. So I had to dig back a bit, and I came to the conclusion that a game that I'm pretty sure almost none of the people listening to this will know is World War II Frontline Command. Which,
never heard of it.
Yeah, I suppose you guys would say that, but just imagine a game like this. It's a transition between Age of Empires and Company of Heroes. So it's a game that meets on the middle, and it released sometime, I think, just 2004 and 2005. So it's a very obscure title. I don't even know how I came to buy it. I guess I just found it on the store, and I found the cover very cool, because it had one of those larger holder boxes, and it was a fantastic World War II game, because it brought things like unit cover and fog of war. This is something that most World War II RTSs didn't have back then, and I think this is fantastic. And I've tried to go back and play to write a piece for strategy and wargaming, and I just couldn't, because the game just doesn't work on modern systems. And since it is such an obscure title, I was looking online to see if there was a solution for it, and I couldn't find it. Oh, also, I think the game is abandonware right now, so if you Google it, I think you can download it in one of those abandonware sites, because this is just a forgotten gem that I think went under a lot of people rated. And if I hadn't been lucky enough to buy it, I would probably don't even know that it existed in the first place.
So why would it even be on the radar for remastered? I know we're talking fantasy here, but Dawn of War had a massive following. Empire at War had
this is just
following.
For me.
Just for you.
He did say in the beginning, if you know. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just because I just want to go back and play it, and I can't, because I can't make it work on my modern system, and that sucks, because I remember the game being. I think you guys really need to check this one out if you like weird RTS related stuff, because for the time, like it was 3D and the game looked spectacular, and like there was a massive, like the first mission was set during D-Day, and the landing scene was just spectacular, and it had a lot of cool effects. Like the soldiers actually looked like soldiers; they didn't look cartoonish. You had a lot of small details, like your trucks were able to tow how do you say, anti-tank guns around. You need to position your, like, artillery had a realistic sort of range, so it was set between like an RTS arcade RTS and a realistic kind of title, and I think it works amazing for my 12-year-old brain, and I just loved it since then. And I'm really sorry that I can't play it right now, because I have the game. I have the original CDs. The manual was like a book, like super thick, and it had the description of every single unit. And I think it's a shame you can't play, but that of course, this is me. I don't think the game even sold enough to justify this, of course.
What was it called again?
World War II Frontline Command.
So, as one little note from earlier, Atari did buy the IP to Total Annihilation, and then went bankrupt. And then the company called Wargaming, which is behind World of Tanks and so on, bought both Total Annihilation and Master of Orion.
But of course,
which I believe Master of Orion, they did do something with it, I believe.
But of course, we don't need a TA remaster, because we have Beyond All Reason.
We certainly do. I was mentioning Total Annihilation Kingdoms, though, which is something different.
Sorry, yes, of course.
I've got something to say. I've been sitting here this whole time, and we had to wait a couple minutes for Nuno. It was no big deal. No big deal. Nuno's at the gym, and we're sitting here, and he's not even shirtless. Like, I feel like we need to see our results, right? We need to be able to track the results.
The only reason I'm not shirtless is because we're recording this without webcams. Otherwise, I would always be shirtless. And I'm pretty sure we would have a massive audience of hardcore female RTS gamers and all that. Yeah, I think so. So before we wrap this one up, any of you guys want to plug some of your stuff?
We're doing big things over on my movie podcast, Millennial Binge. We're working through the rom-coms, getting ready for season 2. Very exciting stuff. Season 2 is all Tom Cruise movies, not rom-coms, mostly Mission Impossible.
Any Henry Cavill movies?
Yes.
Excellent.
So, guys, this has been our first episode. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast, and I'll be seeing you in the next Friday.
And next week we'll be talking about the RTS Renaissance.
So have a lot of fun, play a lot of games, enjoy your remasters, and don't be like Hal, who doesn't like them.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.